excited about interviewing our next expert. We are talking about Dr. Tonia Warnecke. She's a professor of social entrepreneurship and economics at Rollins College. We had the privilege and honor of having her as a major keynote speaker at the Women Who Lead Summit in Puerto Rico, I think 2 years ago. And wow, what a presentation. She is a dynamo and she has a unique ability to simplify complex topics and numbers and facts. So, Tonia, how are you doing?
I am doing great. Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, okay, let's start because I have so many questions for you, and I really want you to answer all of them. It's critical that you help us navigate through the economics of women during COVID. So let me shoot the first question. The pandemic has impacted labor markets across the country as well as the world, as we all know. In the case of women, what does the impact look like?
Thanks. Great question. Well, thinking about women's employment, there's definitely been disproportionate impact. For example, women make up 39% of global employment, but they account for 54% of overall job losses. So definitely disproportionate there. Now, if we think about the United States in particular, women lost about 5.5 million jobs since February 2020. This is more than 1 million more job losses than men. So why is this? Why would this happen? Well, women are disproportionately represented in sectors negatively affected by the crisis. So this includes accommodation, this includes food service, retail trade, wholesale trade, and services across the board, such as the arts, recreation, public administration. In fact, employment in leisure and hospitality, which is a female-dominated sector, that employment was more than 20% lower last month in February 2021 than it was a year before that. Now, of course, some male-dominated sectors, such as construction or transport, were also significantly impacted. But according to a McKinsey & Company analysis, women's jobs are actually 1.8 times more vulnerable to this crisis than men's jobs.
So, are these temporary problems, or do you think, Tonia, that once the COVID is basically gone, that will change?
Well, there's a couple of issues to think about here. So first, not all of the jobs are going to come back, and some industries will also rebound more slowly than others. If we think about it, we already were experiencing trends toward automation and use of artificial intelligence even before the pandemic. And due to the need for social distancing, those trends were accelerated. Now, moving forward, the types of jobs that we're going to see the most impact on are low-wage jobs, particularly in food service, customer sales and service, and less skilled office support. Now, in fact, more than half of displaced low-wage workers may need to shift to occupations in higher wage brackets. So if you think about that, that means reskilling is going to be needed. That's a completely different issue. And research that's been done in both Europe and the USA shows that women are more likely than men to face that issue. But there's another issue too. The other issue is that many women are just leaving the labor force altogether, meaning that they're not planning to return to paid employment. In fact, in the USA, more than 2.5 million women left the labor force between February of last year and January of this year. So that's 2.5 million women, but only 1.8 million men that left the labor force during that entire period. And if we think about which subgroups have been impacted the most, the groups have been working mothers, Black women, and women in senior management positions.
So I guess my question is, and since I'm speaking with the guru in economics, what will be the economic impact of this inequality and the fact that women are opting to leave the labor market?
Yeah, great question. So this is really interesting because McKinsey and Company conducted an analysis recently that had 3 scenarios in it. So the first was that no action was taken to address the gendered impacts of the crisis, right? So we're talking both about a disproportionate number of women becoming unemployed and a disproportionate number of women leaving the labor force altogether. So again, the first scenario, no action is taken at all in terms of the gendered impact. The second scenario was about taking action, but waiting until the crisis ends, like not doing anything about the gendered impacts now, but once the pandemic has kind of subsided, then some action is taken. The third scenario is taking action now to advance gender equality. So if we think about what taking action now means, it means that we would look at the gender parity outcomes that are best in the region, and then we make investments to aim for those specific outcomes. So now let's talk dollars. So if we're comparing not taking action to deal with gendered impacts at all, and we're thinking about taking action now, taking action now could add, get this, $13 trillion to global GDP by 2030. That is a lot of money. That is a lot of business opportunity. And that is hundreds of millions of new jobs for women. Now, if we think about that, and then we think about the middle scenario, right? Like we take action, but we wait until the pandemic crisis has subsided. That still helps global GDP, but it reduces the gains by more than $5 trillion. Now, I know, right? 5 trillion is a lot of money, and sometimes it's hard to really think about what that really means. But current estimates suggest that the global economy lost about $4 trillion in output last year. So waiting to take action on gender equality harms the economy to a similar degree, in this case by restricting the growth potential. Now, if I can just add one more thing, it's worth noting, of course, that even before the pandemic, studies estimated that increasing women's labor force participation could increase the GDP in every US state by more than 5%. And it could increase GDP in 25 states by more than 10%. Now, in dollar terms, we're talking about more than $2 trillion added to the US economy by just increasing women's labor force participation. But of course, achieving those monetary gains will require interventions to support women's equity in the labor market.
The numbers are, don't you think so, Laura? The numbers are mind-blowing. And I'm dying to share these numbers with Celeste Warren from Merck, because we have been talking about what they have been doing to act now within Merck. Wow, I'm really blown away with these numbers. Yeah, I'm speechless. When we talk about particular industries that have been affected the most when it comes to COVID and women in the workplace, which are these industries that we need to pay a close attention because our women are leaving them in mass quantities?
Yeah, so the answer is a little bit, it's a little bit complex because women are leaving jobs both in those sector industries that were already impacted by the crisis, but they're also leaving jobs, professional jobs, white-collar jobs, due to stress due to childcare needs, increased work expectations due to the pandemic, and many other issues. So the groups of women that are leaving are different, and so the types of industries and jobs that we're talking about also are different.
Tonia, if I were your sister, and I am the CEO of this huge organization, what would you recommend me to do to support gender equity in the labor market?
Well, I think there are different items that are useful that can be done at a national level or a company level, but you've asked me for the company level, so I'll address that one. First is that companies are still able to think about childcare support and sick leave and parental leave and things along those lines. And because a lot of women are opting to leave the labor market due to the demands of unpaid care work, including childcare, this is one aspect where companies can make a huge difference in the ability of women not only to accept jobs in the organization, but to really be able to progress and through promotions and all the way up to senior level, management and executive positions. So that would be one. And another, which I believe has already been discussed, is policies and protections and trainings that are dealing with discrimination and other unjust practices in the workplace. But I would also say that there are significant elements that companies can do to provide access to professional skill training, including digital training, financial training that may not be 100% relevant to the exact tasks that someone is performing right at that time for the company, but maybe where the company sees growth in the future, and preparing employees ahead of time to be able to take advantage of those trends and growing opportunities can actually help quite a lot with employee retention and increased productivity as well. And the last suggestion I would make is to lead by example, because it's really important to think about inclusion across different levels of positions, think about hiring processes, create mentorship programs for women. There's a lot of research out there that shows that the way that mentorship often happens in companies, it's very informal. A lot of times it happens, over drinks after work hours, which doesn't necessarily work for working mothers who need to go home and take care of their children after the workday ends. So creating more formal ways for women to obtain those mentorship and those connections can also be very helpful for job progression and skill training.
Well, that putting my hat or putting on my numbers hat, I also need to recommend leaders to evaluate the ROI of childcare and parent care, for example. It's critical. And at the end of the day, you will probably think, okay, I'm adding another, how do you say that word in English? Este otro gasto, that another expense to the P&L. But the fact is that providing that particular benefit will have a direct positive impact on the results of your organization. So it's about thinking and taking a look at the business in a different way, with a different mindset, and adopt new practices, create or be creative when you are offering new practices to your talent, so that you can really attract them and retain them within your organization. This is not the 1700s. We are in 2021, and after COVID, it's more important than ever to be creative and focus on your talent's needs when it comes to helping them help you grow your business. Tonia, thank you for those mind-blowing numbers. Do you have anything else to share with us?
I'll just say, I just wanted to tag on to what you just said a moment ago. Many times, companies don't realize the costs involved in employee attrition, in having to, spend more time on the hiring process, on the retraining process. And it really adds up. There's been a lot of research on this, and investing to help retain your current workforce can be incredibly money saving for the company moving forward. So we have to think both about short-term costs and also the difference between short-term benefits and long-term benefits. Sometimes you're making an investment now and you might not see the return tomorrow, but it will be there. And so it's a matter of just planning that time horizon out. But other than that, thank you so much, Frances. This has been amazing, and I am really honored to be included.
Thank you, Tonia. Like I told you all, she is wonderful, and the way she simplifies concepts is unique. As we already saw when with Deborah's presentation and with what she shared with us, it is critical for us to train our people in order for our companies to promote great work environments free of sexual harassment in a way that you can retain your talent and because of it attract new wonderful talent. And as Tonia also pointed out, you really need to move forward with new benefits, like for example, childcare, in order for you to then again attract and retain the best female talent that will help you grow your company.